Injuries did not spare the running back position here in week number 2. On top of losing Christian McCaffrey for at least 4 weeks, we also saw Joe Mixon go down with an ankle injury, and Isaiah Pacheco ended up getting folded up like an accordion after having his leg bent in ways that they are not meant to be bent. Therefore, he suffered a fractured fibula and is going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks. On the plus side, the running back position seems to be in more of a stable predicament than the wide receiver position entering week number 3, with fewer big names expected to be sidelined this week. Last week, we nailed starts for Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, and J.K. Dobbins. If you started any of those running backs last week, you likely had success. However, that was last week, and we are motivated to move forward here with this week's starts and sits at the running back position. Starting with Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers as they take on the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know who needs to hear this still, but Jordan Mason is a must start each and every single week while Christian McCaffrey remains out of the lineup. In the 2 weeks in which Mason has been handed the keys to this 49ers run game, he has run for 247 yards on 48 attempts, which works out to about 5.1 yards per attempt. While he's been a non-factor in the passing game, it doesn't matter. He's still managing to average 19.8 fantasy points per contest. That kind of production, it cannot be ignored. With back-to-back 100-yard games that resulted in a pair of rushing scores, Mason will be lined up against the Los Angeles Rams defense that does not have one Aaron Donald anchoring it. That's a win for the 49ers there, people. In 2 games so far this season, the Rams are among the worst when it comes to fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Back in week number 1, it was David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs that would combine for 131 rushing yards and a pair of rushing scores. Last week, James Conner was a ball of hate, averaging 5.8 yards per carry, finishing with 122 yards on the ground and a touchdown of his own. That bodes well for Mason this week, who sits second in the NFL with those 247 rushing yards. The second start of the week, it goes to Devin Achane there of the Miami Dolphins, taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Things are taking a bad turn for the Miami Dolphins. They're going from bad to worse as Tua Tagovailoa was recently lost indefinitely, and the Dolphins, they had to turn to Skylar Thompson, which is never a good thing. In fact, things were going so bad that they reached out to the practice squad of the Baltimore Ravens and signed Tyler Huntley. By the way, I like Tyler Huntley, just for the record. However, just because the Dolphins can't throw the ball doesn't mean that they can't run the ball. Against the Bills last week, Achane and this Dolphins offense ran for 96 yards on 22 carries while adding an additional 69 yards on 7 receptions. Achane, he led the team in both those categories. Through 2 weeks, Achane is averaging 29 opportunities per game, and I don't care who you are, volume is everything at the running back position. After a solid defensive performance against the Denver Broncos in week number 1, Seattle, they look more like the Seahawks of 2023 there when they allowed Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson to combine for 177 yards on 33 carries. Numbers matter, and here they suggested Achane, he's going to find the end zone once again, as he's done 13 times throughout his career in 13 career contests. The third start of the week, let's go a little bit deeper here, people. Let's go with Zamir White of the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Carolina Panthers. It is time to wish this into existence. We have to put it out there for good things to come, because we know that Zamir White needs this game more than air itself. If Zamir White cannot produce this week against the lowly Carolina Panthers, it may be time for him to sit on the bench or even get cut to your waiver wire here after this contest. Both the Chargers and the Ravens, hey, they're very good defenses, but the same cannot be said about the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing 199.5 rushing yards per game here in 2024 after allowing the second most on a per game basis back in 2023. This is what we call a get-right type game for Zamir White. He averages 3.1 yards per carry. The Panthers, they're allowing 4.9 yards per carry there. So something's got to give. This has to be good for Zamir White, doesn't it? The one thing that Zamir White still has going for him, he's got 22 rushing attempts so far this season. Alexander Madison, he's got just 9 of them. Expectation is that the Raiders, they're going to be playing with the lead in this contest. It's going to be a positive game script, which should lead to more opportunities for White as the Raiders look to get this rushing attack back on schedule where it was to end the 2023 campaign when it was one of the most efficient over the final few weeks. Now for running backs that I'm sitting this week, it starts with J.K. Dobbins, the Los Angeles Chargers, taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I know we all love J.K. Dobbins. He's been doing good things. Now, but I have to ask you, raise your hand if you had J.K. Dobbins as a leading rusher entering week number 3 of the NFL season. Now put your hands down, you fools. You're not fooling anybody. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody. Now, let's give credit where credit is due. what Dobbins has accomplished since returning from his injury there, it is unprecedented. Then again, Cam Akers, then with the Rams, he was averaging 5.5 yards per carry when he returned post-Achilles before fading into fantasy abyss. This is what I fear when it comes to Dobbins. I'm no doctor, but eventually something has to give. I don't believe that Dobbins can sustain this kind of success, this kind of workload moving forward week in and week out. This week against the Steelers is an actual test. TJ Watt, he is a game wrecker, and we know with Justin Herbert less than 100%, the Chargers are going to find themselves becoming quite predictable in how they attack this game. That is not a good thing to let the Steelers know what you're doing before you do it. And this is a Steelers team that is allowing just 3.7 yards per attempt, the fourth fewest rushing yards per game this season. Another sit this week is Aaron Jones of the Minnesota Vikings as they take on the Houston Texans. Minnesota's backfield, it is looking like a true 50-50 split. Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler. I'm not going to be able to tell who's going to be what each and every week here. After 14 carries and 94 yards against the Giants back in week 1. Listen, week 2 was not the same. The carries there split 10-9 with Chandler outproducing Jones by 50 yards. With the backfield split, it is going to be hard to trust Jones each and every week, especially when you're facing a difficult matchup, such as the case this week against the Houston Texans, who have allowed the 7th fewest rushing yards per game thus far. Sam Darnold, we know he's got a history of seeing ghosts. If we know that, that means the Houston Texans know that, which means if you thought Caleb Williams was under pressure last week, wait till you see what the Texans have dialed up for Darnold this week. This game, it could get ugly quickly. And finally, my third sit of the week is Devin Singletary of the New York Giants taking on the aforementioned Cleveland Browns. If you've heard me talk about the Cleveland Browns when we're talking about the wide receiver position, guess what? They're just as good when it comes to defending opposing running backs. If it wasn't for bad luck, the Giants, they would have no luck at all. Last week, the Giants became just the second team in NFL history to score 3 touchdowns while not surrendering 1 and still managed to lose. The Giants, they're going to find a way to giant people. Only the 1989 Rams accomplished this feat in a loss to the Minnesota Vikings. However, one positive from last week's contest was Devin Singletary, who churned out 95 yards on the ground on 16 carries against that Washington Commanders team. That being said, I don't foresee a repeat performance here in week number 3. Why the difficulty in repeating? The Cleveland Browns. They are among the best when it comes to overall team defense. Last week, the Browns, they allowed Travis Etienne to score, but they did limit the Jaguars back to just 52 rushing yards after yielding just 40 yards rushing to Ezekiel Elliott the previous week. This is another one of those games that the back being featured could find himself with a very negative game script, and in all likelihood, you've got better options out there, so use them. With that being said, use us over at RotoBaller because we are bringing all the latest fantasy football news and analysis every single day. And check out the Discord channel for, hey, all your starts and sits questions. It's a 24/7 hotline, and I'm going to be there. See you then.